Hands where I can see them. Don't move. The shout tore through the air, just as Reggie turned his head. 2 white officers surged toward him, grabbing his arms and slamming him against the pavement outside the Beverly Grand Hotel. His black suit hit the concrete with a thud, elbow torn, dust smearing across his back. A knee pressed deep into his spine. I said, "Don't move." One officer barked, yanking Reggie's wrist behind him and locking it with a zip tie. "I'm security, private." "Security?" Reggie grunted through gritted teeth, his voice half lost beneath the command-heavy chaos. But they weren't listening. Across the hotel's marble entrance, a crowd of guests had begun to gather. Some whispered. Others stared. A few raised phones, recording the scene like it was performance theater. "Is this really happening?" a woman gasped. Her camera lens shook slightly as she zoomed in on Reggie's face. "Please," Reggie tried again, voice cracked. "You're making a mistake?" The officer applying pressure grunted, as if Reggie's words were just noise. The zip tie clicked tighter dot in that moment on that busy, sunlit sidewalk. Reggie Wallace, decorated Army veteran and trusted protector to the stars, was no longer a man. He was a threat in their eyes, and no one seemed to ask why. The second officer yanked the slim black earpiece from Reggie's ear and tossed it aside like it was laced with danger. "What's this?" "Looks like some kind of transmitter," he muttered, half to his partner, half to the crowd. Another pointed toward a black pouch clipped to Reggie's belt. "What's that taser?" "Knife. It's gear. Standard equipment." "I'm licensed." "I'm..." "Right." The first officer cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Probably ex-con pretending to be security. This is L.A. We've seen the act before." Reggie's head hung low, blood trickling from his temple. He didn't recognize his own voice anymore. It felt distant, like someone else was speaking through pain. "I work for Morgan Freeman." The officers exchanged a glance, and one of them scoffed. "And I'm Denzel Washington." "Save it." The damage was already spreading, not just to Reggie's body, but to the story forming in the minds of the bystanders. A dangerous man. A lie exposed. An image twisted. A woman in a crimson dress leaned toward her husband. "He doesn't look like a guest. He's probably one of those people who hang around celebrities," the man mumbled, sipping his espresso. Some voices wavered in concern. Should they be doing all this in public? Another woman asked, "Do they even know who he is?" Someone whispered from behind a pillar, but no one stepped forward. Phones stayed up. Eyebrows furrowed. Curiosity outweighed courage. Sympathy clashed with silent compliance, and Reggie lay there, zip-tied and bleeding center stage for an audience that saw him as either criminal or curious, not human, not professional, not enough. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the hotel's grand lobby. "Where is Morgan Freeman?" It wasn't the voice of a stranger. It was panic. It was someone looking for Reggie. He lifted his head slightly, blood still dripping from his temple. "That's my..." "Shut up," the officer snapped, shoving his head back down. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. Murmurs shifted tone. Something didn't add up. The officer who grabbed his phone seconds earlier had silenced a call from an unfamiliar name, Freemanade. But even then, neither of them connected the dots. They didn't care to. Reggie turned his head and locked eyes with a woman holding her phone to her chest. Her lips parted like she might say something, but she did in single quotes not yet. The world began to blur. Reggie's breath grew ragged. His knees scraped against the pavement, and he could feel gravel digging into torn skin beneath his suit. Dust clouded his vision. A dull ringing filled his ears. The broken sunglasses beneath the officer's boot stared back like a shattered reflection. He wanted to speak, to yell, to demand the dignity he'd earned. But his strength was leaving him, and all that remained was silence. The sounds faded. Time slowed. Reggie's face battered, bruised, and still rested on the concrete. They didn't even ask who I was. One drop of blood struck the sidewalk, blooming into the shape of something unspoken. The story wasn't supposed to begin like this, but it did. Just 3 hours earlier. Reggie adjusted his cufflinks. The cool metal a small comfort against the tension building in his chest. Standing outside the luxury hotel, he scanned the perimeter with the calm discipline only a decade in the Army could instill. 10 years in the Army, and still, people only see the color of my skin, he thought, tightening his jaw. Transitioning from soldier to elite private security wasn't easy, but Reggie had earned every step. He'd guarded diplomats, CEOs, and now the legendary Morgan Freeman. His sharp eyes missed nothing. His posture spoke confidence, but beneath it all was a quiet awareness of the sideways glances and whispered doubts when he was alone. He wasn't here to prove himself. He was here to protect. Reggie's mind drifted to the streets of the Bronx, where he grew up, where sirens were a soundtrack and danger lurked behind every corner. Raised by his mother, a nurse working double shifts, he learned early that survival demanded discipline and silence. He walked to school past broken windows and gang signs, all while police cruisers occasionally slowed, their eyes scanning. He knew what it meant to be judged before a word was spoken, but he fought. He kept his head down, worked hard, and became the first in his family to enlist. The military gave him purpose and a way out of the neighborhood that tried to define him. Morgan Freeman's assistant's voice came through clear and steady on the phone. Morgan wanted someone who wouldn't flinch in a crisis and who carried quiet authority. Reggie passed every background check and psychological screening without a hitch. Tactical drills? Flawless, more than muscle. Reggie was strategy and restraint wrapped in integrity. He wasn't just hired as a bodyguard, he was handpicked for his character. In a world that doubted him, Morgan saw something rare. Steady reliability and unshakable. Calm. Reggie stood near the valet station, eyes sharp, watching every exit and entrance like clockwork. The hum of luxury and low chatter surrounded him, but the cold gaze of the hotel staff was unmistakable. "Sir, can I help you?" "We don't allow loitering here," a white concierge said, voice clipped and eyes darting. Calmly, Reggie showed his credentials. The man barely glanced before turning away, leaving a chill in his wake. 2 bellboys passed by, whispering loud enough to catch Reggie's attention. Is he waiting for someone? Or casing the place? He breathed deeply, swallowing. The sting. This was routine. The invisible barriers of suspicion and stereotype were nothing new, yet every interaction chipped away at the quiet confidence he'd built. His phone buzzed. Morgan's assistant. 5 minutes out. Keep your eyes on the west entrance. Reggie adjusted his jacket, muscles tensing as he scanned the scene again. It was just another routine detail until he caught sight of a woman inside the hotel, fingers already dialing 911 behind his back. Subtle unease settled in his chest. He didn't know then that the nightmare was about to unfold, that the very people he was protecting would become the ones who questioned his right to be there. Reggie rounded the corner toward the west parking structure, eyes sharp as he scanned for any unusual activity. It was routine part of the vigilance Morgan Freeman expected from his security detail, but a white woman nearby stopped cold, clutching her purse tightly. Her gaze locked not on his earpiece or the black suit tailored to professional standards, but on his skin. Suspicion settled in her expression like a shadow. Without confronting him, she slipped inside the hotel lobby and leaned toward the front desk, whispering urgently, "There's a suspicious man near the valet garage. I think he has something on his belt." She didn't say a word to Reggie. She didn't need to. In that moment, she trusted the system to act. And just like that, a silent alarm had been triggered. Almost immediately, 2 hotel security guards approached with cautious steps. One looked hesitant, uncertain about the situation. The other cleared his throat and said, "We've had a concern raised. Mind showing your ID?" Reggie's demeanor didn't waver. Calm and collected, he produced his license and company badge credentials clear and unmistakable. The guards glanced over the documents, but didn't bother to verify. Instead, they exchanged awkward looks, their murmurs betraying doubt it was. A brief, silent judgment. A microaggression dressed as procedure. Reggie knew this routine all too well, yet he stayed professional, aware that any misstep could escalate what was already precarious. One guard's voice tightened. "We're just following procedure. This kind of thing needs to be checked out." Reggie's jaw clenched, but he held his composure. The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. What started as suspicion was quickly turning into something more. Muttered call into the radio confirmed the worst. LAPD was on its way. He attempted to reach Freeman's security team through his radio, but interference swallowed his signal, leaving him isolated. This wasn't about safety anymore. It was about control, and Reggie felt the weight of it pressing down harder. A patrol car screeched sharply, tires grinding as 2 officers jumped out, scanning with practiced suspicion. "Step away from the building," the first officer barked. Reggie stepped back slowly, hands open. "I'm with Freeman's security group. I'm on duty." The officer's gaze narrowed. "I'll believe that when I see something real. Got anything that isn't printed on a home printer?" The second cop leaned in, whispering, "He's casing the place. Dressed too clean. Doesn't fit." Reggie's fingers curled slightly, tension rising, but he kept his voice steady. He knew this game, how assumptions wrapped in bias could override truth. Yet he remained disciplined, refusing to give them the satisfaction of provocation. One officer held Reggie's ID limply, barely glancing at the credentials without running any check. The air turned cold trust, evaporated like smoke. No questions, no consideration. Reggie tried to explain. "My clearance level is verified through Freeman's legal team," but the words were cut short, dismissed as if irrelevant. Inside, his thoughts spiraled. They've already decided. None of this matters. Behind the officers, the hotel concierge appeared, his presence adding weight to the unfolding judgment. Reggie realized with a sinking heart, the more he tried to prove himself, the deeper he sank. This wasn't about facts anymore. It was about prejudice, and it was tightening its grip. "Get down. Now!" One officer barked as Reggie's chest collided with the squad car's hood, the metal scorching against his skin. His forehead smacked hard, and a sharp sting shot through his temple. Blood began to trickle down his cheek, staining the crisp black suit he'd worn with pride. Another cop gripped his arms roughly, twisting them behind his back, while the cold bite of zip ties cut into his wrists. The pain was sharp, but nothing compared to the shock of being treated like a criminal in front of dozens of hotel guests. A few gasps echoed through the crowd. Most just stared frozen in disbelief. "Is this really happening?" Someone whispered. From the hotel entrance, the white concierge stepped outside, arms crossed, his voice low and clipped. He refused to cooperate. The words hung heavy, feeding the unfolding nightmare. Phones appeared like an invisible wave, rising into the air. Some recording, others merely watching. What did he do? A voice muttered nearby. Why isn't he fighting back? Another wondered. Probably one of those imposters. Someone said with a sneer. A middle-aged man smirked as he zoomed in on Reggie's face and the zip ties digging into his wrists. No one stepped forward. No one intervened. The silence was louder than any shout a cruel bystander effect in real time, feeding the injustice as it unfolded. Reggie's eyes flickered to the crowd, searching for a sign of support, but found only quiet judgment and hesitation. This public humiliation was more than physical. It was a silent betrayal from those who stood by. Reggie's phone buzzed insistently inside his jacket pocket. "Please," he muttered through clenched teeth. "That's Mr. Freeman's team." A white officer yanked the device free, glancing at the screen before answering mockingly, "Yeah? He's busy right now," then slammed the phone down. Reggie's eyes widened. That call was his only lifeline, a tether to truth and authority, and now it was severed. The weight of isolation pressed harder, the system closing in around him, trying to reclaim a shred of dignity. Reggie said firmly, "I work for Morgan Freeman. I'm his protection detail." The cop sneered, voice dripping with sarcasm. "And I'm Denzel Washington. Welcome to Hollywood, buddy." Laughter bubbled from another officer nearby. Reggie's jaw clenched tight. No words could undo the humiliation, and he refused to rise. To their bait, silence became his shield, a quiet protest against the degrading joke that mocked his identity. Suddenly, a sleek black SUV rolled to the curb. The driver jumped out, instantly recognizing the situation and the man at the center of it. "What the hell is going on here?" "That's our guy," he exclaimed, stepping toward Reggie. But an officer blocked his path firmly. "Back off. We're handling it." Reggie's eyes lifted, lips trembling with silent plea. The tension crackled through the crowd, the truth struggling to break free from the fog of assumptions. A door slammed open behind them. Morgan Freeman's personal assistant stormed onto the scene, voice sharp and outraged. "What are you doing?" "That's Mr. Freeman's security detail." The officers hesitated, uncertain now. One stubborn cop held his ground. "We've got protocol. Could be a stage setup. We've seen this kind of trick before." The assistant's face flushed with fury. "You've assaulted a licensed federal security officer on active duty." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some eyes shifted from passive observation to disturbed awareness. The scales of justice trembled in that moment fragile, yet shifting bound wrists resting on cracked pavement. Reggie sat slumped, blood drawing and pride shattered. His ruined suit was a stark contrast to the fire burning in his eyes. Sweat mingled with pain and humiliation, but beneath it all was defiance, a refusal to be erased. Around him, the crowd stirred uneasily, sensing the weight of injustice, but too late to reverse what had been done. The silence was thick, waiting before the inevitable shift. As hands reached to haul Reggie toward the squad car, a commanding voice rang out, "Put him down. Now." The hotel doors swung open, and Morgan Freeman stepped forward, every inch the man of authority and calm resolve. The crowd fell silent. Even the officers froze. Freeman's gaze locked first on Reggie, then on the officers, a silent accusation burning in his eyes. His voice dropped low, but cut through the tension like a knife. "You've made a very serious mistake." The words hung heavy, final, and undeniable. "Fade to black." Morgan Freeman stepped forward, his voice calm but piercing through the chaos like a judge's gavel. "What the hell are you doing to my bodyguard?" The crowd fell silent. The murmurs and sirens faded into an uneasy hush. Even the officers froze mid-motion. Freeman's face was a mask of steel, eyes burning with quiet authority. "He's my protection detail," Freeman continued, voice steady. "You've just assaulted a licensed federal security operative." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their mistake sinking in. From the ground, Reggie lifted his head. His face was bloodied, bruised, but a flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. Fury mingled with relief. His protector had arrived. This moment marked a sudden shift, the beginning of reclaiming dignity in the face of injustice. One of Freeman's aides hurried forward, clutching a leather folder. He flipped it open deliberately, revealing a stack of official documents: Reggie's federal security clearance, concealed carry permits, contracts with Freeman's agency. Proof beyond doubt, that officer muttered under his breath. "We didn't know." Freeman cut him off sharply, voice cold and unyielding. "You didn't want to know." The tension tightened, the truth undeniable now in black and white. No more assumptions. No more ignorance. This evidence was the foundation on which justice would be demanded. Police radios crackled with urgency. Multiple news vans arriving at the front entrance. "Sir." Somebody in the crowd had already uploaded the incident. The footage was viral. A field reporter's voice echoed. "This black man, violently detained outside the Beverly Grand, is allegedly Morgan Freeman's bodyguard." The officers' faces paled as the realization dawned. This story would follow them well beyond the hotel's sidewalk. Accountability was no longer optional. The power of the media spotlight began to tip the scales. The hotel manager appeared, face flushed, suit rumpled. "Mr. Freeman, I had no idea." Freeman's gaze pinned him like a spotlight. "You saw a black man in a suit and assumed he didn't belong." Freeman said steadily. "You didn't have to say it out loud. You acted on it." The manager looked away, silent shame replacing any defense. Words meant little now. Actions had spoken volumes, revealing the deep-seated biases still lurking beneath polished facades. An officer reluctantly cut the zip ties binding Reggie's wrists. "We're sorry, sir," he murmured. Reggie didn't respond. Slowly, he rose, shoulders squared, eyes unbroken. Blood stained his hands. His lapel was torn, but his posture spoke volumes. He wiped the sweat from his brow and stared ahead, refusing to look back at those who'd wronged him. He was not broken, just done playing the role they expected. The quiet resilience was a powerful declaration, a refusal to be silenced by racial profiling and abuse. Freeman placed a firm hand on Reggie's shoulder. "He served his country. He protected me. He's risked his life more than you'll ever understand." The officers stood silent, faces blank. Freeman's voice softened but carried undeniable weight. "You didn't see a protector. You saw a threat. That's the difference between justice and racism." His words echoed beyond the hotel, challenging everyone present to confront uncomfortable truths about bias and prejudice. Across social media, outrage exploded. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, every platform flooded with clips of Reggie bleeding. On the sidewalk, headlines blared. "Morgan Freeman's bodyguard assaulted by LAPD." Within 30 minutes, #Justice for Reggie was trending worldwide. Celebrities shared the footage. Civil rights organizations issued urgent statements. The world was watching and demanding accountability. The collective voice of thousands refused to let this injustice fade quietly. This was no longer just Reggie's fight. It had become a movement. News broke fast. LAPD launched a formal investigation into the incident. Both officers involved were suspended with pay, pending a review by Internal Affairs. Civil rights lawyers wasted no time, filing FOIA requests to access the body cam footage. "This won't be swept under the rug," activists promised. Public pressure surged, demanding transparency and accountability. Reggie's ordeal was no longer just a story. It was a catalyst for change. The Beverly Grand faced a storm. Online one-star reviews flooded their social media pages, and calls for boycott echoed loudly. Formal press release was issued. "We deeply regret the incident and are re-evaluating our staff training policies." But the public wasn't convinced. Morgan Freeman himself refused to return to the hotel for future events, making the silence around the apology deafening. On CNN, Freeman's voice carried a powerful message. "If my bodyguard can be zip-tied and mocked just steps from me, what happens to the man who doesn't have fame standing beside him?" His words resonated widely, echoed on late-night shows, morning news, and global headlines. The viral footage was no longer just a viral moment. It was a movement spotlighting racial bias in America's justice system. Freeman's platform amplified the call for systemic change beyond Reggie's personal story. Support poured in from veterans saying, "That could have been me," to civil rights activists inviting Reggie to speak at rallies and schools. Reggie launched the Guardian Project, a training initiative teaching security professionals and law enforcement how to de-escalate conflicts, respect authority, and confront their own biases. He transformed victims silenced on the street to a leader, demanding change. His journey inspired many, turning pain into purpose. A photo of Reggie standing tall beside Freeman in a sharp navy suit went viral. News outlets captioned it, "Healed but not silent." The image spread like wildfire on posters, memes, murals, and art installations. It became more than a picture. It was a symbol of reclaimed dignity and resilience. Reggie's voice closed the story, steady and strong. "I was zip-tied on the sidewalk like a criminal, but I stood back up. And this time, the world saw it too." His words lingered over clips of past struggles and new victories. The screen faded to black. Final frame. Hashtag Justice for Reggie. Still trending. Take a moment to really think about it. Would you have stepped in, spoken up, or stayed silent? It's important to confront our own instincts and biases honestly. Share your thoughts raw, respectful, and real in the comments below. Silence and ignorance only let injustice grow. By spreading this story, you help others understand the impact of racial bias and systemic discrimination. This channel isn't just about stories. It's a movement for justice and awareness. Stay with us as we continue to shine a light on truths that matter.